What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke, aka Dansweight here, and welcome back to this Final Fantasy XII attack only adventure. There is a lot to get through as always, so let's get straight down to business. Thank you guys so much for the support so far. Please remember to continue to like the video if you are enjoying the content, and let's see what I got up to in this next session. Okay, so at the end of the last session, we defeated Matius and obtained our second Esper after a lot of work in the Still Shrine of Miriam. So in terms of getting Matius, this one was actually a little bit more beneficial than Belias because on the license board, there was actually one character who could get a bit of a meaningful benefit after activating the Matius part of the license board, and that was actually Penelo, our Time Battle Mage. So in the future, what I end up doing is using Matius on the Time Battle Mage. I mean, as you've seen, the Time Battle Mage is basically the lowest HP character that we have, and so an extra 230 HP as a result of activating Matius was definitely very welcome for me. So at this stage, I'm just showing you guys a few more fights from inside the Still Shrine. Obviously, I had to kind of make my way back out, and that was generally okay. And so from here, we need to make our way back towards Mount Omises because there is a boss battle looming once we get back to the temple. In terms of the Paramina Rift and Mount Baromeses general areas, you guys have seen it already in the last session, so I'm not going to talk too much more about it. Obviously, we're even a little bit stronger than we were previously, so in general, nothing over here was too much of a problem. I didn't spend a supreme amount of time trying to farm anything particularly here, but I did try to generally engage in most of the random encounters that I ran past on my way to Mount Baromeses. And so then I found myself back at the Merchant, and I had a decent amount of gil to play with, and there were a few upgrades possible. So looking at the situation now, obviously I've only got 4,000 gil, but there is, for example, this upgrade for Balthea, the Raz Al-Ghethi gun. I think I didn't get the previous upgrade, I think it was only a +4 or something, but I felt like he really needed one at this stage, and so I wanted to focus on that. So thanks to all of the encounters that we'd been taken out along the way, we finally started to be able to sell some stuff and get a meaningful amount of gil. And so thanks to that, we were able to get a little bit of upgrading in before the boss battle that was coming up. So again, not going to spend too much time in the shops and with inventory. It will factor in this session. This was one of those sessions where I kind of reached a point where I felt like I really need to focus on the inventory, but this wasn't quite that point just yet. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, we are going to move things along rapidly to Judge Bergen, who we had to fight next. The info that we need for Judge Bergen is that he is a level 30 and has only 17,200 HP, which is not particularly huge. Now, he is not immune to sleep and blind, but we cannot inflict those just yet. But he's also not immune to sap and slow. So any enemy that's that kind of HP level and you can afflict sap and slow, that already looks pretty promising for us. So let's take a look at how this played out. So here I was still in basically that random encounter mode. You can see I have things like the golden amulet equipped. But in terms of strategy, I don't think there was anything particularly special for this one. I fancied my chances. I thought this would probably be easier than Matius. I just had my heavier hitters out there ready to kick ass. And you can see here that Penelo has a Sword of Kings because the hunting crossbow that I brought, I don't actually have the license for yet. So this was kind of funny. I couldn't afflict a slow with the bolts that I had, so this was a little bit silly, but I'll definitely get that very soon. So yeah, Penelo could not affect this fight as she should have, but I did make sure I changed to the chopper for Varn so that he could try to get that sap on there, which at this stage I had seen that he was vulnerable to. So let's pick it up and see how we do. There are 3 kind of mini judges behind us, and so once I began sprinting, I changed my mind and I decided to go back. And I thought, okay, let's take out these judges first, just in case they become a bit of a nuisance. So you can see I didn't really make my preparations here. I don't have Protect on everyone or any of that kind of thing. So maybe I got a little bit cocky here, but let's just see how this played out. So I still have a decent amount of HP. And especially once the judge is by himself, I think we should get things done pretty quickly. But this guy's put up a nice last stand there. Got a few parries in and stuff. So Varn is already not looking great here. So I definitely could have done better. I think I should have just still tried to get Sap like immediately on the judge. So you can see I haven't even got to hit Judge Bergen yet, and Varn is being targeted once again. So there you go. So he died before he was able to afflict Sap, so not the best start here against the judge. So Fran comes into the fray. Let's take a look. $500, I mean, that was quite a lot of damage. But I'm hoping that we should have the firepower here to take it out. So the idea, of course, is that Ashe kind of draws the fire here. She's got the shield and has a decent chance of kind of slowing him down. And my long-range attackers are out of range here for him. And they just keep doing their thing. But obviously Bergen's speeding up a little bit here. I was going too soon. And does land some counters. There you go. There you go. So his kind of last stand begins there. You can see him starting to glow. Ashe did very well. Time to bring in another physical attacker. But he's going after Fran now, so Fran's going to be in a bit of danger here. 676, quite a lot of damage. And 1023 from the kick. So this should have been more comfortable than it was. It's mostly down to the bad start, and this is where the Sword of Kings comes in. This is where should obviously have been the crossbow, but made a mistake. But still, I have 2000 HP with Barsh, and so thankfully we managed to get it done first time. I mean, Judge Bergen, I think it's one of those where you'd have to be pretty seriously underleveled, I think, to struggle on Bergen. So first time win, even though I did far from a great job. It was definitely enough to get it done. And from here, it's another part of the game where you have quite a lot of freedom to kind of do some hunts, go back to Rabanasta. I think most of this we can probably skip because I decided to generally start pushing on here with the story. I didn't want to really get bogged down with hunts and that kind of thing. I was generally doing okay for the story. And so the plan was to start to head towards Nalbina so that I could then continue the story by heading into the Mosforan High Waste and then the Salika Wood. So let's pick things up in the Mosforan High Wastes. This part of the game is one of those where like the areas do start to expand out quite a bit. Each like individual zone is not exactly huge, but in terms of the amount of zones per area and the amount of random encounters that you're faced with, it can get quite a lot here. So let's kind of watch for a little bit and see how I got on in the first few encounters, and then we'll generally start to make our way through to the next one. As you can see, the random encounters are a level 30 here, and so we're not a million miles away. Level 24 is not too bad. I was generally still doing my best to try and kind of keep up with the random encounters and make sure that I'm still taking them out generally and not allowing myself to fall like a huge amount behind. I think like 8 to 10 levels behind even the random encounters is like, for me at least, that's kind of alarm bells, and I'd need to start kind of farming a little bit to make sure that my levels can keep up. But for now, at least you saw I took that one out relatively fast. They only have 2000 HP, these wolves. You can see, I mean, it only takes a few hits to take them out. But as I say, I think because these areas start to kind of grow in number of zones, in between, for example, like healing spots or any of that kind of stuff, you can start to, it starts to feel a little bit more like the dungeons did, where the biggest threat was just more like the cumulative loss of health from fighting all of these random encounters, rather than any one of them being like a particular danger in terms of wiping your party out. So you can see the early signs are pretty solid. The party seems to be able to handle the random encounters in here. So we'll move it on to something a little more dangerous, the Humbubba. These guys are level 32/33. So we're starting to get into that danger zone where they're getting closer to being about 10 levels higher than I am. And while casting Protect and that kind of thing as well, definitely not ideal. But still, I mean, you can see they're being taken out relatively fast. So, as always, it tends to be more so like the chip damage that is causing the problems. But the encounters themselves are relatively pedestrian still at this stage, thankfully. So, moving ahead, let's take a look at this little zone here. I thought this one might be a little bit more difficult. So, I tried to take out the Slaven first, so it doesn't kind of get involved with the other two. I'm trying to break them up. But since this guy is like not hostile, it's not going to really come towards us to attack. But I wanted to kind of hit it once and then draw it away. But as you can see, the golems kind of get involved immediately. So my little plan kind of failed here. But you can see, not taking any chances. I see the dark coming in, and so I want to immediately get those Argyles on there so I take less damage. Let's check out these clay golems. Definitely a bit of a higher level here. So I'm trying to see if I can kind of reflect it back onto them. I thought maybe that might be nice. But that doesn't seem to be working, really. You can see the arrows kind of coming in, but I don't think any of them reflected. Yeah, she's just straight up getting hit. So that one doesn't exactly seem to work. So dark now. Yeah, she still got hit fully. So this confused me a little bit. I didn't understand why like reflect didn't work. This was something that at the time I didn't exactly like stop playing and try to kind of like research it, but it did feel weird to me. Like you saw very, very clearly in that fight, both for Aero and for Dark, the fact that Ash has Reflect on did absolutely nothing. And for some reason in Final Fantasy XII, it's actually quite curious, but I did research this later on, and it seems to me that based on what people are saying, there are a lot of enemies and a lot of attacks in Final Fantasy XII that, even though they're standard sort of magic attacks, they seem to be able to pierce through the Reflect, which is strange because Reflect generally tends to reflect magic. That's what it does. But it seems to get bypassed quite a lot by enemies in this game. So obviously then I was wondering, well, what's the point? Can it ever be useful? The answer is, honestly, in this run, if enemies just bypass it all the time, I don't think it's that useful. But I'm hoping there might be some scenarios where potentially it doesn't bypass. So I still, like, later on there is an opportunity to, for example, buy the Mirror Mail, which has Reflect on it as standard. And I'm still going to keep it on me anyway, just as a, you know, an extra option. But it seems to me that its best use in Final Fantasy XII is if you have an enemy that themselves has Reflect, you can basically put Reflect on yourself and bounce spells off your own characters in order to be able to damage an enemy that has Reflect. So that seems to be more the use than actually protecting your characters from spells, which is kind of a shame because obviously in a challenge like this it would have been very, very helpful. But you saw there, I mean, I definitely still keep Reflect around, but unfortunately it didn't work particularly well from what I could see in most cases. Now, what you can also see in this shop, there are definitely a lot of nice items. And this is where sort of the problems started to begin for me in terms of just straight up not having enough gil to basically upgrade whenever I got the opportunity. So it might be the case that the game is kind of showing you these upgrades, but it's saying that you kind of need to work towards these. Like you're not supposed to be able to get new stuff every time you get to a new shop. For me, that's often not been my experience when playing these games. It's like if you get to a new town or a new location and the shop has new stuff, most of the time you can buy a decent chunk of that stuff as long as you've been engaging with the game. And as you've seen, I mean, in general, I've been fighting the random encounters. I've not exactly been escaping everything. I've done a few hunts. I've not done them all, but I've definitely done like a few of them. But despite that, I'm kind of nowhere near being able to have all of the latest stuff in the shops. So in general, when push comes to shove, I tend to focus more on weapons than armor, especially if there's weapons that, for example, have a status attachment or something like that. But this was the session where I started to kind of realize that even if I do try to focus on weapons, most of the time I still can't get all of the weapons. And even if I can, this practice of focusing on the weapons started to leave me really underpowered when it comes to my armors. And so I started to really get hit harder and harder from the enemies I was facing. And you'll see in a few later fights, it really started to create a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do now is, you've generally had a chance to see some stuff in the Mossforan High Waste. I am going to start to move things along here towards the Salika Wood. Okay, here we go, Salika Wood. We are at level 25 now, so we basically went up one level. as a result of the encounters that we had in the Mossforeign High Waste. And we'll see how we do against some of these guys. So level 33 now. The gap is slowly starting to grow, as I say. It was about 6 levels before. Now we're starting to get more towards the 7, 8 level stage. But we still handled it just fine. I think attackingly we're definitely still on point, but defensively I think we're getting increasingly further away from where we need to be. And as usual, my general philosophy of trying to swap around my party enough that everybody roughly stays at the same level is persisting. Managed to do a pretty good job of that so far. Pretty much everyone always stays at the same levels roughly. There's never more than one level separating the team. You just never know when a particular character is just going to be useful in a fight, so I don't want to just sort of commit to having, say, I don't know, 3 or 4 of my favorites and have those guys race ahead of the rest. And so in the background you will see a few more encounters from the Seneca Wood. In general it seems to be a pretty decent experience, no problems. Again, of course I'm getting damage chipped away and sometimes characters would die here and there and stuff, but I had enough of an item inventory to just revive people as needed and just keep on rolling. Now everything was going well, but me being me, I still landed myself in some trouble because there's a fight that is generally avoidable, but that I thought I should still try to take on and defeat, and that is going to be against the King Bomb. Now thankfully there is a save nearby, and we have autosave and all that stuff, so I wasn't too worried about getting killed here, but I had to give this one a go. Now King Bomb is really annoying because it's part of that same type of style of enemy that has, for example, lots of ability to renew, which I absolutely hate. And apparently this guy, I later on found out, can cast renew twice. And it has 37,596 HP. So when you pair that HP level with the fact that it can cast renew twice, with the fact that it can inflict oil on you, and the fact that it has minions with it that it can relaunch, that is an absolute recipe for disaster. But I was generally just getting through the game easy enough that I thought we've got to give this a try. So I'll show you guys my first attempt against the King Bomb, and we'll see how that went. Gonna go for the King Bomb first here, just to see if I can inflict some statuses. And they already did a self-destruct here. Now, the good news is they actually self-destructed before I had something like oil put on me. So I thought maybe that's not so bad. In this particular attempt, thankfully, the self-destruct happened very fast, and as a result, the minions were gone for a little while, so I could actually get a bit of momentum. In future attempts, this actually did not play out, so this actually ended up basically being my best attempt already from the start. Like in other attempts, those guys stuck around and I had oil put on me, and then they were doing chain magic, and then by the time they self-destructed, it was just completely horrible. So, pretty sure my first attempt was basically my best. Already you can see we're doing notably less damage than we were to the random encounters that we were facing. And this guy has a nasty habit of kind of just running away. You saw the way it just very quickly floated away to the other side. But thankfully Balthier is close enough that we kind of keep it within range. But we're not doing very good damage at all here. I later found out that this enemy also has basically a reduced damage kind of augment, and that reduces damage down to 1/3 of its normal effectiveness, which is very nice. You saw sap hit there as well, so it's not immune to sap, which is good news. But renew, of course, is a thing, and so that's going to kind of offset the fact that we can sap it. So generally solid run here, but here comes the renew. There it is. So it's healed a good 15,000 HP there. So that takes the real total up to about 50. But so far so good. Good blocks there as well. At this stage I was thinking, yeah, maybe I can kind of push through, because I hadn't looked up the whole renew mechanics and that kind of thing. And it was looking pretty nice. But 810 damage, 899, you saw all of that damage there. And what you're also noticing, just to make things even worse, this guy has a really weird and kind of unfair mechanic in which any damage that you do to it it partially gets reflected back onto yourself. I've never heard of that. Like, this guy has minions, it casts Renew multiple times, it has a reduced damage augment to reduce your damage by 2/3, and every time you hit it, you take damage yourself. It's like, how many more weird augments and OP buffs do you want to give a boss? So, this guy's a bit bullshit, I definitely have to say, but that's the way the game is designed. And you are going to see that despite my best efforts here, we put in a really good little shift there. Pinello did some nice damage, I got some crits and stuff. At this stage, I thought maybe there's a tiny chance I can push through, like we did a ton of damage there. And it hasn't resummoned minions, which I think was, again, a little bit weird and a little bit fortunate here. I wasn't really sure why. And yeah, fixing my mistake there. I had the fiery arrows. Good block there. Doing his best. Finally got taken out. Now watch the damage Fran will receive here. 840. Doing my best to just stay alive here. 605. 412. And we just took too much damage too quickly. So that was my first and best attempt against this guy. I'll show you in the background just like a couple more, but in general it went pretty badly. Getting rid of the minions without ending up with lots of like oil or just losing a ton of HP was already difficult. 2, the move Cry for Help pretty much always happened in every other attempt, so I got a bit lucky again on that first one where it didn't do it. And ultimately after about 10-15 minutes of messing around with this guy, I was just like, you know what, it's optional anyway, I don't think it's worth it. It doesn't drop any like specifically valuable equipment or items or anything like that. So I thought to myself, let's just leave this guy alone. We need to come back when we are probably a bit stronger, because this was one of those bosses where I was definitely really feeling the effects of being hit quite hard. So we are going to move on from this one, but there was actually a pretty significant hunt I did manage to kill in this one, so it wasn't all failures for this episode. But we will continue the story here and move it along towards the Fon Coast. We had to find the Mughals, and once we did find the Mughals, we obviously unlocked the path to Fon Coast, and we can then continue our adventure from there. So fresh off my humiliation against the King Bomb, I was at level 26 at this stage, and ready to kick some more random encounter ass, because that's basically all I could do at this stage. The hunts and optional bosses were definitely starting to get a bit difficult for me, without potentially like a lot of repeat attempts and grinding, or kind of farming for like specific equipments or status effects I could put and that kind of thing. And there you go. So I do still have Ash's Disable Hammer. It's just such a nice ability if it hits. It's starting to get a little bit underpowered here, but it's still powerful enough that you don't lose like an enormous amount of damage output as a result of having it. Like the advantages of Disable, for now at least for me, they outweigh the cons. Obtained a casual platinum sword there. Yeah, see, 1006 damage still from the sledgehammer. Nice. So when it comes to random encounters, it's same old really. Like they tend to scale up in a way that they don't seem to have like a massive jump where the outcome particularly changes. At this stage, when I was like relatively close to a random encounter, I just basically took a little bit of extra time to have everybody manually attack them. It seemed like the quickest way to get everybody's attack gauge filling up faster. If I relied on them to just start filling up once my attacker selects them, there's always just a bit of a delay, which I never liked. I think it gets me like a slight advantage. And so you can see the only thing that changes really is that like the damage accumulates a bit faster. Like the further our levels are dropping behind what we're facing, obviously the amount of battles we can go before needing to heal is being reduced. But the way this game works, if there's ever any situation where you're truly in danger, in many cases you can take the time to backtrack and just go back to the save crystal and just kind of sprint your way back to where you were before. So for me, it ended up becoming a bit of a balance of, is this worth using, like, say, a high potion on right now? Or should I basically save my items and just run back to the save and then come back again once I'm healed? So moving a little further ahead, you can see that I do have characters under Protect here since I started noticing that I was taking more and more damage. I did basically as soon as everyone's Protect ran out, I was taking the time to switch back to the Guilt measure and getting Protect back on everybody before continuing on. I need to increasingly kind of make up for the fact that my defenses are pretty bad. But you can see, despite taking more damage, in general things are pretty good on the Fawn Coast, and before long I could make my way to the Hunter's Camp. Now, this was the part of the game where, again, there are upgrades available for weapons, and every time I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to start saving up for trying to get some armors, then I see a bunch of upgradable weapons, and I'd see like, damn, I really need these, there's like some nice improvements. And so this was a stage of the game where I really started to think, damn man, like how do I get enough gil to really get these upgrades? Like I want all of this stuff, or at least most of it, and at this stage obviously there's absolutely no chance of me getting most of it. So you can see I'm definitely starting to get some more valuable things to sell here, but in terms of the gil that I need, like each person's weapon upgrade is like, I don't know, 10 to 13,000. Then each person has 2 pieces of armor that they can buy, which at this stage is probably like 5 to 7,000 each piece, and so that's like another 10k per person. So you need like, I don't know, 80 to 100,000 just to buy the best stuff for everybody right now, and you can see I'm absolutely nowhere near that 100,000. So this was starting to get a little bit frustrating because obviously I wanted to try and keep up as best I could, but it seemed to me like I was starting to really fall behind. And given the way that I got my ass kicked by like the King Bomb, and seeing like the ever increasing damage I was taking even from the random encounters, this was the stage of the game where I was starting to feel like I'm slipping a bit too far behind in terms of my armors, and I really need to start getting myself some improvements. So in general, you're going to see some like highlights from this stuff, but I set myself the task of trying to improve my situation meaningfully here by definitely, of course, as always, getting new weapons, but also picking up a few new pieces of armor as well. And so one way I wanted to do that relatively naturally as well was to obviously still continue to fight random encounters to get more loot that I could later sell, but also if there were any hunts that I felt like could be interesting that I could do that I might be well rewarded for, then it might be worth taking on. And so as a result of this, I actually found myself in the Westersan. And what I was looking for there was actually the ringworm. Now, this one, the hunt level seemed relatively low to me. And I thought to myself, it seemed low enough that I could probably get myself a win. Then I was in for a little bit of a rude awakening because I found out that this guy actually is a level 32 with 128,648 HP. And so this was the enemy in the game that I faced that had the most HP so far, and it has Protect, and it immediately comes in with an Immobilizer. Now thankfully I do have something that can protect me against this, and so I need the black belt here in order to do that. Thankfully you can see Vaughn did not have the license board activated, but he had the LP points. So at this point I kind of didn't realize what I was getting myself into, but I decided to persevere anyway and just see if I could make it happen. We can at least afflict slow on it, so that was one little thing that I knew was possible. But outside of that, I didn't really have much in the way of statuses to be able to do the damage here. So let's take a look. 327 from Vaughn. Not particularly great. 378. But Balthea is doing pretty good damage. You can see Pinello missing quite often with the crossbow there for some reason. I swapped over to the Gladius for Vaughn, hoping he'll do some more damage with that. And honestly, the answer was no. So unfortunately, I think he might halve wind damage potentially. And then I thought, let's try the Avenger, because this guy is probably immune to Berserk, and at least I can still get the increased benefit there. So this is me trying to bring on the big guns. He doesn't have black belt too, so you can see up until this point I have not been preparing for Immobilize as a status. And this is what I mean when I say often for me it's like necessity is the father of invention. Sometimes I just don't foresee things, and then when something happens and then I see it, I'm like, ah, okay, I guess that's what I need to do. And so that was the, the motivation here for me to make sure I could get it for everybody. So now we should be doing some slightly better damage. Watch Varn here. 893, that's definitely much better. And he has the flame shield once again to protect against breath. So double check that there. So 128,000 HP, but the boys are doing about 3,000 HP a pop here, so it's not too bad. Now I wanted to run a test. Terrible timing here. You know what I was trying to do here, but it was really bad timing. I kind of swapped the weapon just before Balthier took his turn. So the animation's already in swing here. I just had to wait one more second. And I immediately, of course, he put Protect on. If I was hitting one of my own characters, I guarantee you that Protect probably wouldn't have worked. But because I hit the boss, of course it worked first time. So you see there, look, Varn didn't get the Protect. The game's trolling me now. You hit the boss, it works first time. You hit Varn, doesn't work. Twice. Game is cruel sometimes. There you go. Took 3 hits on Varn. But it was my mistake. I should have done better. And I should have come in a little bit more prepared. So basically, this first attempt, what I will do is I will start to forward towards the end of it because it is a long, arduous fight. And sometime later, this was the scenario that I found myself in. Ash is the only one left. But you can see soon, hopefully, the camera kind of moves here. Yeah, she's immobilized, so you can't see. There you go. Okay. So, yeah, had about a quarter HP left. And that was considering the fact that a lot of things went wrong. Like I put Protect on the boss. I didn't come in with Protect. And I didn't really know exactly what I was dealing with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move ahead to the second attempt. And this one was actually successful. Okay, so you can see everybody has Protect this time. And so thanks to the guilt measure, I can come in a little bit more prepared. And so now, hopefully, I should be able to go again against the ringworm. Yeah, so I got my slow on there just to try and get it on as quickly as possible here. But despite my best efforts, these annoying little shits still got involved. And switch to something a little spicier here. Above here. But you can see I've still got like armors like Brigandine at the moment for Bosch. Definitely not ideal. Okay, let's get back to business. Once that Protect wears off, we will definitely start to do a little bit more damage. I think it's still on there, I'm not sure. Bringing in Ash. She now has the Hammerhead equipped. I did manage to buy that previously. Get those black belts on. Obviously, once you remove Immobilizer, that's huge because it wastes a lot of time casting that as well. So it gives you a lot of time to get some more attacks in while it's messing with that. 791, that's a lot of damage on Barsh, unfortunately. So I still tried my luck with the chopper here. At this point, I hadn't looked up how much HP this guy has. But it was pretty clear to me at this stage I'd hit it enough that sap just doesn't work. And so I had to change it up. And now I've gone to Berserker Braces for Bosch. So now I'm really starting to up the ante. I figure he's going to die soon anyway, might as well go out swinging. Unfortunately, he didn't last too much longer after that. The reason I didn't want to keep the Berserker Braces on too much was just because in case I didn't see it cast Immobilizer, for example, I didn't switch back on in time and I got somebody immobilized. You saw at the end of the previous attempt, obviously if you get hit with Immobilize, it's going to be really brutal. So I was trying to refrain from Berserk for now. Switching over to Ash. Varn has got the ringworm's attention. I'm trying to move out the way a little here. Just let Varn deal with it one-on-one for a while. So Balthier comes in here. You can see, once again, he's got the guilt measure equipped. Let's see if I can actually do this properly now. Yeah, it looks like he's doing the right thing this time. There it is. So Balthier did his job correctly this time as the guy with Protect. That's been one of my favorite things so far about this playthrough, like the fact that you can have Protect on hit. Like the way that you can basically bring in someone like Balthier, like a mage almost, like basically cast Protect and then leave again. I think it's great. Now slow has worn off. I'm trying to get slow back on with Penelo here. It really changes the fight. Like once slow is gone, the rate at which obviously he attacks is far higher. It becomes a lot more dangerous. So now we have to hope slow gets put back on here. Great damage from Ashe. Some critical stuff there as well. Immobilizer coming in. I need to double check. Yeah, you can see she's missing it. So it's this constant kind of looking through and making sure I have the right things equipped. There it is. You can see things like Immobilizer don't get reflected either. They still take the hit, unfortunately. A lot of missing here. And Penelo's not going to last too much longer. She did not manage to get a slow on there, unfortunately. And so both of my characters who can cast slow, who can put slow on, are gone. So things are not looking particularly great here. There's still a lot of HP to take out. But thankfully for us, for once, we have an enemy here that isn't going to be casting like Renew, for example. It does have a restore, you can see. Big restoration there. So I think all in all, we're probably still taking out a good like 150, 160k HP here. But from here on, I don't think it heals again. But you're probably thinking at this point, this fight, you're probably going to lose. Like you've lost most of your characters anyway. You can't put slow on it. It's done a restore and probably has about 70% of its HP. Like, from here it's looking a little bit unlikely. So, let's just see how it played out anyway. You can see these Immobilizers are buying me a lot of time here to do damage. So, no damage taken for like the last 10-15 seconds. And in the meantime, we've probably done like 20k ourselves. So that's definitely helpful. A little bit unlucky, that breath felt like it was quite far away, but Fran still got hit. And so now, things are going to start to get a little bit more interesting. No Berserker braces for these guys, unfortunately. I did have a look to see if I could equip it, but Balthier was the only one. So Balthier will equip it at the moment. And you can see the damage. I don't think it makes a difference for guns, I'm not too sure. But I thought, hey, got nothing to lose here. Now, this is the part where the fight gets really weird. Basically, if you notice, Fran is the one being targeted, and this guy is so slow that it can't actually catch Fran. And so I kind of started to realize here, hold on a minute, as long as I keep my distance but don't go so far away that it targets someone else, there's a chance I might be able to actually pull through here. So Ashe is confused, which is horrible. But I'm just like, you know what? We're kind of on a little bit of a run here. So Immobilizer starts to come in. Again, it's wasting its own time, really. I'm going to quickly switch back to the black belt here to not get immobilized. And once it comes out of the Immobilizer phase, I'm trying to just generally get Ashe out of there. And there you go. It's back to kind of walking after Fran here. And in the meantime, we're doing big chunks of damage here. You're seeing like some of those criticals flying in. It's just basically getting stuck in a bit of a loop of just kind of walking around and trying to catch Fran, it seems. So I call this kind of a bit of a walk the dog strat. It's just almost like we're taking Ringworm out for a walk here. And from such a strange position where it seemed like the fight was over, Ringworm just kind of gave up almost. So this was kind of the opposite of what tends to happen where in the final like 10 to 20% bosses get absolutely just like horrendous. This one was so obsessed with trying to chase down Fran that it just basically gave up doing all of its attacks. And I managed to actually defeat the Ringworm. So it ended up being a very strange fight. It felt like it was one I kind of had no business winning. But once it basically began just sort of walking in circles and seemingly just coming after Fran, I was thinking to myself, okay, if that's how you want to play it, then I'm just going to keep sort of running away from you and keeping my distance. And all we had to worry about was immobilize her, and we had the infantry to protect against that anyway. Now, from here, I am going to skip ahead once again, because what I wanted to do was to continue kind of hanging out and trying to make a bit more gil so that I could really start to buy some more equipment for my characters. I did attempt another hunt in the meantime. This one I'm not going to show much of at all. I decided to try and fight Marilith, which was me kind of biting off a little bit more than I can chew. And it was another one of those where, kind of opposite to Ringworm, but much more kind of standard Final Fantasy XII there. Once you get down below that 20% HP, like 10 to 20%, it gets absolutely brutal. And it was hitting me for like 1,000 damage or something like that, and just hitting me repeatedly over and over and over again. And there was no way I could hang with it at that kind of level. So that was another one of those fights where I was like, my defenses are just not strong enough. Maybe if I had some like 2 or 3 tier higher armors, there might be a chance I could survive it. But as it is now, it just seemed a bit too powerful. And I wasn't willing to kind of grind the RNG needed to win, because Marilith is a bit of a annoying hunt, and you have to kind of spend a lot of time waiting before it appears. So in the background, I will show you, while I'm talking about this stuff, just some of the upgrades that I made. But generally, by the end of this little phase of play, I was definitely doing a little bit better. And I had some level 7 light and heavy armors for my party, because it was seeming increasingly essential. So from here, we're going to move things on to the Chitta Uplands. Now, the Chitta Uplands is a huge area, once again, loads of different zones. And so in terms of the encounters, you can see here still, we're generally keeping up the same rough level, where it's taking maybe 4 to 6 hits to take out each enemy. And so we're still in a pretty good place. So let's take a look at some of these before we kind of start to skip ahead here. You can see Barsh is all the way up to 3,463 HP here, and Balthier is almost at 3,000 himself. So HP numbers are definitely looking solid here, but I'm pretty much starting to come towards the end of how high I can make their HP. Since we're going to try to do this with a single license board for as long as we can, we're going to kind of top out relatively early here in terms of HP. So for now, at least for this stage of the game, these are really good numbers. But maybe by the time we get to the end game, we're really going to be suffering and struggling in terms of HP. So we'll see how it goes, but for now at least, we're doing pretty well. But obviously that 1,457 for Penelo is, even for this part of the game, it's like, it's okay. And given that she's a long-range fighter, she'll still be okay. But once we start hitting the end game again, like, she's not going to get that much more HP than what she has now. And so it could definitely start to get pretty bad in the future. So we'll see. I would say this area was generally pretty good for me because I could keep up with it in terms of my level. And there was, of course, a lot of opportunities for enemies to drop decent loot and score me LP points and experience. So this was definitely a place where I spent a little bit of time, and once again made sure I generally engaged with the random encounters and didn't spend too much time and just skipping and running past them. The final thing I'll mention about this place is that right before I headed into the next storyline location, I noticed that there was actually a chest that could give me a platinum armor. It was a chest that required like a few respawns in order to be able to get it, but given how difficult it can be to get armors for these characters, I decided to take my time and go in and out of the zone to keep getting the chest to respawn, and eventually I did manage to get a platinum armor, which is a pretty high level heavy armor for Ash or Penelo. And so yes, in the name of time and keeping these episodes flowing, I'm not going to spend too much more time in the Chitta Uplands. You guys get the idea. And it played out relatively similar to most of the other areas that we've been encountering so far. And with that, we are going to head into the Sochin Cave Palace. So this place was kind of funny because I was anticipating there would be a save crystal as soon as I moved on from the Chitta Uplands and went into the cave. The problem was that there wasn't, and so I thought to myself, okay, I kind of need to sprint through here a little bit just so I can get to the first area that has a save crystal, and then from there I'll be able to obviously put my save in, heal up, and then properly kind of engage with the area. And in doing so, I did not realize or remember that you actually trigger off this particular little boss fight against what I lovingly call the little shits. And so these guys were completely unexpected for me. I was already trying to run away because I wasn't doing so well in terms of my HP, and I found myself encountering this bunch. And so this was definitely not what I needed right now. So Balthea, for example, he's only got 480 HP left. No one has Protect other than Ash. And so in terms of HP, I would say on average we're at about 30%, 35%. And so unfortunately, I got a little bit blindsided by these guys. And so I'll move things along and show you that, yes, the little shits did manage to defeat me the first time. But I would say the reason for that was just purely due to not being prepared at all and trying to kind of rush towards the save crystal and not remembering that I triggered off this fight if I kept on going. So that was a little bit of an embarrassing loss, admittedly, but hey, I tried to show you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly in these playthroughs. You guys know how it is. And so I came back pretty soon after to give these guys a rematch with a little bit more preparation this time. Now, from my first attempt, I already felt like I was close enough that I didn't need to do the whole, like, set everybody up with Protect and all that kind of stuff. As long as I had full HP, I felt like I could probably beat these guys. So let's take a proper look. Here, my goal was basically, obviously, to try to take out one at a time. And so I had to set my gambits up so that my characters, my other party members, always attacked whoever I was selecting. So I didn't want them going off trying to hit anyone with the lowest HP or the nearest visible or anything like that. And as long as we focused on one of them, and we got a little bit lucky in that they didn't bunch up too much, then I think we would have a much better chance. So you can see all of them rushing in here, but I wanted to make sure I took this one out before we had to deal with those problems. There you go. You can see this is a bit of a status effect fight. And you quite literally have to pick your poison here because you cannot protect against basically all of the statuses that are going to come your way here. So things like poison, I'm going to take. That's not a problem. Slow, you kind of have to take. But I think like confusion, sleep, and darkness, I think those ones, they're probably the ones obviously most worth trying to protect against when you're fighting these guys. So one of them got taken out. And I think there is a little bit of an RNG element here. Like sometimes you can see here they have extended periods where they're isolated. And if that happens, you obviously have a great chance of taking them out. But if they tend to stick together and they're bunching a lot, then you could find yourself in serious trouble. So almost taking the second one out. There we go. Moving on to the top stalk. This was already way better than the first time I faced them. And no one has any really, really bad status effects. Like poison and slow, we're going to have to deal with. But no one is confused or blinded or anything like that. Almost another one gone. There you go. Obviously, the long-range attackers are a nice bonus here. You don't have to go right up to them to be able to land the hit. There we go. Some nice parries there. Some good moves from... Yeah. Oh, Barsh absolutely destroyed that one. Wow. Barsh was not having it. Just making sure here, trying to make sure I don't do anything silly. He got a ton of LP points because of the golden amulet, by the way. Anyone who has a golden amulet equipped in this fight is going to get a lot of LP. I kind of realized that a little bit late. But hey, Barsh got a whole bunch of points, and so there's only one left now. And from here, we should definitely be able to get revenge for losing in our previous attempt. I'm going to speed this one up because this final one just kept running across the map constantly, just kind of delaying the inevitable. But yes, we did manage to defeat it and make our way into the Sochan Palace Cave proper. In this one, there's going to be a lot of these kind of undead style enemies. We're going to have like zombies and gargoyle style enemies. Level 36, so we have gone up a couple of levels ourselves, so we're still just about on that threshold where we're keeping up, I would say. Once again, 3 hits there, 4 hits. Very nice. So this is the other enemy. We have imps here. They have 4,700 and they're level 39. So in terms of the raw numbers, that's quite dangerous. They're weak to ice. I don't have the ability to use ice, unfortunately, with anybody so far. But you can see still, 2 sets of attacks seems to be enough to get the job done. And that's generally, I would say, the story of the Sochin K Palace. Now, what I will say, while I'm showing you guys a few more things in the background, is that this was one place where I knew that there was like a special kind of system to follow, a little, almost like a puzzle thing, where you have the waterfalls that are blocking your path. What I concluded was that the first time through here, I think I would prefer to just go to the end of it as soon as I can, not get too bogged down with trying to figure out the waterfalls and all of that stuff. And then once I'm done with the next area after that, then I can backtrack a bit, figure out the waterfalls, and get the special item, because it was an item that I thought I could benefit from later on. So for now, at least, I'm going to ignore it and just try to take generally a pretty quick path forward so that I can make some progress. But you can see, I think the armor upgrades that I've made have generally been useful. I think if I tried to go to this area as well, having not upgraded my armor and still hanging around with like a brigandine or something for Barsh, I think I would have really started to feel it here. And so I think it was worth the little sort of investment that I made in trying to kill a few extra enemies, get a bit of extra loot, farm a little bit of extra gil by using the little chopper trick that I showed in an early episode. And with that, it was definitely much, much better for me. And I was able to definitely take less damage and not have to rely as heavily on, for example, having Protect all the time, because I was taking so much physical damage. So generally not too dangerous an area, definitely doable, and we will move on to the next boss battle that awaits us here. Now, once again, it was kind of funny because this was a phase where I wasn't really looking at my guide properly, and I did not, again, realize that inside this particular room, we were going to be facing off against the Airyman. The Airyman is a level 38, and has 62,149 HP. So that is pretty formidable. Let's take a look at how this went. You can see my HP here. Again, this is just poor preparation on my part. I got a little bit carried away with just trying to kind of get through this place and get into Arcades as soon as possible. And I did not take a look at the guide, which would obviously tell me that I need to fight this guy first. And so let's see what happened when trying to fight this guy. Now, in hindsight, I looked this up, and it is basically immune to pretty much anything that I could have afflicted other than slow. So slow is a possibility. I always try it anyway, especially if I haven't looked up an enemy. It's always worth a shot just to see if you can make it happen. I decided to take the hit with Confusion here because it does have moves like Immobilize. And so that's why I decided to still give these guys black belts instead. Alright, let's go for it. So it is going to do, obviously, all of that phasing in and out stuff. And in general, I will still try to stay relatively aggressive here. But regardless of that, they're just annoying. Thankfully, its physical hits are not super heavy. Toxify. Here it comes. Okay, poisoned. But he has a lot of HP, and poison takes a long time to really affect us, so we'll take that. Just a slippery customer, so it's hard to do a lot of damage here. But once we get going, once we actually land some hits, we're doing nice big chunks of damage. But it's taking a while to actually get those hits in. Yeah, finally dead. And you can see I'm not in a great position here. We should have definitely had a lot more HP and some more options. Slow hasn't worked so far, so I'm deciding to kind of switch it over. And this is where we started to gain a little bit more momentum in the fight. So Pinello's going to try to generally get out of range here. But here you can notice that my gambits were not set up correctly as well. I was still in basically random encounter mode. And it was generally too many times where, because I wasn't able to target something, my characters were also not targeting properly. And so this was starting to look much better now. Foxfire coming in again. Seems like this time we avoided it. And here I'm like, why don't we just go all out, put those Berserker Braces on, and see what Barsh can do. He's still got a decent chunk of HP here, so it might be worth it. This time, Phantasmal Gaze, I decide to to do the right thing here. Put the bowline sash on. Take the time to do it. Confusion's just too annoying if you don't. Yeah, good thing I worked my way to accessories 15 to make sure. But there you go. Immunity, then we have to juggle it back. Put the berserkers back on. So a lot of menu juggling, of course, when it comes to this stuff, but if you really want to make the most out of it, you kind of have to. Otherwise, you're really at the mercy of this stuff. Now, what I did here, interestingly, I don't know if kind of having the gambit with like lowest HP was actually helping here. Because one is the lead to target, and one is the enemy with the lowest HP. I'm not too sure. So after the split, I'm not sure if it's better that I had that gambit. But we're definitely starting to gain more momentum here. And Varsh is doing a good job here with his berserker stuff. Bringing Varn back in. Getting the Avenger onto him, does more damage. Yeah, Ariman's doing his divide move. So you can see like Varn got pulled away to the lower HP one there. So the one that was right in front of him, he just kind of ignored. So I'm not sure if the attacking gambits I had set up were actually beneficial here. The divide just doesn't last very long, thankfully. Yeah, look at this damage here. Look at that chain. 8 chain. Wow. So this was another fight I think I kind of had no business winning, really. I didn't come in prepared enough. But we're making it happen. Yeah, a lot of dividing happening here. Get the ice shield on there. And get some ice protection going just to see if I can finish it here. You can see the Blizzara coming in. Did my best to protect there. Wasn't enough to save Varn, unfortunately. So just when things were looking like we could finish it off, it's getting more dangerous again. Casting Fire now. Just taking my time. Protecting what I can. Go. Look at that from Barsh once again. Doom comes in as well. Running out of time, literally. Can we hang in there and finish it off? Hanging by a thread here. It's going to be a very close one. Come on. Thankfully, the divide was gone just in time, and we just about managed to finish it off. So this was definitely close, but I think if I came in like all guns blazing with max HP and protect on everyone and all that kind of stuff, I think we definitely would have been a little bit more comfortable. So another storyline boss bites the dust, and we are able to continue our path towards Arcades and Dr. Sid. From here, there were still a few paths to go through and a decent amount of encounters that we had to fight. And so I thought, let me just kind of save on my recovery items and see if I can sprint through to the end. And so that's exactly what I did. It was a little bit hairy, but I thought to myself, there's probably a small chance that I fail here. And worst case, if I really do, I've got an autosave, so I should be fine. And fine I was. And so we made it to Arcades. So from here, once again, I'm going to kind of move things along. I'm going to hit the fast forward button. I did like the whole waterfall thing to get to the central part of the Sochen Cave Palace, and I did pick up the Sakura Saizuri. And then there's a lot of time spent in Arcades talking to people, progressing the story. We had the whole thing where we have to basically obtain chops in order to gain access to the central part and all of that jazz. So we're definitely going to skip all of that stuff because it's just going to take a very long time. There were definitely a couple of weapon options as well that I wanted that I end up going for. Now, one cool thing about Arcades is that this is the first place where X potions become an option for you to be able to buy from the shop. And given that my HP at this stage was getting into like the 3,000 to 4,000 for a lot of my characters, it definitely felt to me like it was the right thing to do And eventually we managed to make our way to Draclaw Laboratory. This is a place that's generally, again, a little bit more puzzle-based, I think, just in terms of the way that it's structured and the way that you have to open certain colored doors and close other ones in order to get through and that kind of thing. So most of it, I think, is more to do with that. You'll regularly encounter soldiers along the way here, so let's have a look at one such encounter and you'll get an idea of how things are moving along. Right, so here's an encounter. Let's have a look. We've got the Imperial Hoplite and the Swordsman. Big damage. I saw 1,000 coming in there. So these guys can hit very hard. They're not to be scoffed at. And they seem to have a decent amount of block potential as well. And well, if you're not careful, more and more of them will come in and you could find yourself getting pretty overwhelmed here. So this was not a great start against these guys. Pinello definitely got picked on quite badly there. And you can see that 1,500 HP, not doing so great against these guys. But because they're pretty strong in terms of their defenses, there's kind of not a huge amount you can do here against them. But we did take them out. And so there were definitely a few times where I realized that there's kind of too many of them coming in here. I kind of need to get away and keep myself protected here. But you can see, there you go, there's a save crystal. So thanks to the save crystal, you can generally manage around these parts and navigate your way through Draclaw Laboratory on your way to meeting Dr. Sid. So I think what I'm going to do in order to round off this episode, I do want to show you guys the Sid boss battle. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, while you're watching preparations, let me talk a little bit about Dr. Sid himself. We are currently at about level 30 to 31, and Dr. Sid is a level 40. So again, we're at that kind of range where it definitely seems doable, but it's on like the end of the scale where things might start to get a little bit dangerous. He has 72,989 HP, but this is a fight where if you can do 75% of his HP, you will be able to still win the fight and progress things onwards. Now, this fight is particularly difficult because he has these rooks around him that bestow him with positive buffs. And so the way I decide to go for this one, and I think the way most people go in this fight, is of course to try and target the rooks first in order to leave Sid by himself and then have a better chance of victory. So let's head into the fight and see how we fare against the good doctor. Alright, here we go. I decided to try and put Ash in Berserker from the very start just to see if she can land some heavy hits. And then I realized that maybe not such a good idea because I kind of want to target the rooks specifically, and obviously that she's not going to be able to do that if she's busy just being berserked and kind of just doing her own thing. In terms of accessories, I don't think there's too much you can do here because Sid is relatively unique in that he is a boss that uses guns to attack you. And so as a result, your defense stat doesn't matter. In the same way when you're using a gun, it ignores the enemy's defense. It is the same for you. So you kind of have to deal with whatever damage you're receiving from Sid. You don't have too much choice here. But we are going to start with the rooks. The rooks themselves have 9,859 HP. So in total, we're going to have to still do about 100,000 HP in order to defeat everything in this boss battle. So again, trying to make sure I take out the rooks as quickly as possible and focus my attacks in on them. Now, thankfully, Dr. Sid's gun doesn't do a lot of damage. I'm kind of relieved. Like 327 is really not that much damage. We've been putting our work in on the license board, so we've definitely got quite a lot of HP to work with as well. So now down to 3 rooks. But we're looking pretty good so far. I mean, Sid, he's not really attacking that frequently. And when he does, he's not doing a whole lot of damage. And these guys are wasting time with Reflect and stuff. Of course, that doesn't affect us at all. More than happy for them to waste their time on Reflect. Still not dead. Of course, this initial set is starting to run lower on HP now, but if these 3 can basically take out all of the rooks, then I think we're already in a good place. So So pretty decent damage, nothing like special. They're not really like destroying the rooks, but those combos from Barsh are definitely really, really nice. I was kind of curious what was in the chests. Apparently these chests are missable, so I thought let's just grab them. I can sell them later, at least. So one final rook left here. And Barsh is in critical mode. See if we can finish this off. I want to bring Balthier in a bit later. Since I know they can do really big damage, I kind of want to try and finish off the final rook with someone else. And I also know, once the rooks are all taken out, a certain attack is going to come in. So let's just finish this rook off here. Should be soon. I think Vaughn did a 0 damage there. I needed to check something. Yeah, I think he must have something equipped that's really not doing very well here. Yeah, so I'm checking now. I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah, that was not the correct weapon there. That's better. Okay, so now all the rooks are gone and we just have Dr. Sid. Now he has a lot of buffs on, of course. And once all of his rooks are gone, he's going to do his special move pretty soon. So he's walking off. Once he gets to this bit here, he's going to do the move. So I'm checking now to see my party members. I'm going to sacrifice Fran here, most likely, because I do know that it's going to basically hit everybody and it's going to do about 1,000 damage. So let's have a look here. This is basically unavoidable damage. Like if at this stage you have less than like 800, 1,000, then you're probably going to die. Let's have a look. How much does it do? 740. Not as much as I thought. So Fran does die, of course, but let's see if the remaining guys have enough firepower to get this job done. So Ash is back in, and now I'm thinking I need to do damage as quickly as possible, because I don't want to get hit with too many more of those special moves. Like 750 is not a crazy amount of damage, but obviously we're starting to run low on HP here. Look at those hits from Ash. Did you see the damage? 1,380, 1,500, 1,000, 3,200. Ash truly just went insane here. Really destroying Dr. Sid here. And so this flurry from these three absolutely destroyed him. And we managed to bring him down to the final 25%. And as a result, Dr. Sid was defeated the first time round. So this was honestly a little bit easier than I expected. I was a little bit worried about the whole situation with the guns, and that he might be a bit too powerful and I won't be able to slow him down because obviously his damage will pierce through our defenses. But thankfully, we managed to get the job done, thanks in no small part to the Berserker Bracers and Ash going absolutely crazy and doing a lot of damage in the final phase of the fight. So once again, another jam-packed episode, a lot of areas covered. Sorry that I'm starting to go through some of the areas a bit quickly, like for example the Chitta Uplands and Moss Foreign High Waste and stuff, but I think at this point I've kind of established the random encounter areas enough that I really need to focus my attention a bit more on the bosses and making as much progress as possible in these sessions, because there is still plenty to come, and I hope you will enjoy the upcoming content in the next episode. So for now, thank you all so much for watching. As always, early access is available on Patreon, and it massively supports the channel for these big projects. Also, don't forget that once you get the early access episodes on Patreon, those ones are ad-free. So if you don't have YouTube Premium and you hate those pesky ads, then that is also another way to escape them while supporting the channel in a huge way. So I will see you guys for the next episode. Thank you all for watching. Take care.